for the first time, it might feel a bit overwhelming at times, and we'll go from there. See, I can start. Is it good to go? Okay, so I wanted to first of all start with what you're aware of. So notice what you're aware of at this moment in time. Okay, just have a sense of awareness of physical, feet on the floor, your back on the chair. You might be wearing glasses and so on and so forth. So what you relegate to the unconscious, what is in the conscious mind. What we want to do is a naturalistic way of inviting someone. And notice I use the word inviting someone into a trance state, inviting them into a relaxed state, inviting them into a more receptive state, rather than the word induce. So traditional hypnosis, I mentioned earlier, when I made my journey into the world of hypnosis and some of the more traditional ways and learnings I went on, it was, I will induce you, I will put you under. And my suspicion is that hypnosis made a renaissance, in roughly around about the Second World War, and that's when anesthetic was also popular for obvious reasons. And I think some of the language of the time filtered into the world of hypnosis. So you will go under, I will do this. It was almost procedural. Okay, a bit like now we're seeing some of the terminology from computers coming into therapy and coaching. You're going to reprogram a brain. You're going to do. We know you can't reprogram a brain as such. You can reprocess information, but you just generally can't, like you could do a computer. So bearing that in mind, that you had that language, the renaissance of hypnosis, and then you've got the anesthesia, and I think some of the language filtered through. That really wasn't for me, and I took a lot from it, and I sort of went down the more Ericksonian road. I never met Erickson. I came in after into the party later, after he passed away, obviously. But I've been very fortunate to have learned under people who had been trained by him and who sort of kept his legacy going as well. And in my own journey, I had a lot of learnings. I learned to sort of keep things more naturalistic, which I'm going to cover today. So as for me, it's about extending a natural experience. So linking an everyday experience, that you've got something to work with. So linking an everyday experience to a solution. Okay, so we're going to talk about how we can link a natural experience, and we can link that natural experience towards a solution, towards where the person wants to go, towards a well-formed outcome. Extend that reality. Hypnotic qualities we'll cover shortly. So invitation for the person to focus on what they want to focus on. So I'm not going to say to you or to the person I'm working with, close your eyes and you're on a beach, you're on the countryside or whatever. I'm going to invite them to go somewhere of their choice, where they're comfortable to go. So we know it's important for the person to feel safe. Okay? Someone once told me that using a script, now I don't know, and you couldn't confirm this, but they were saying that using a script is about 15% success rate. It's probably not too far off the mark, where tailoring has a lot more success rate, because you tailor it to the individual. So a script might work well for one person, but not well for somebody else. And you could argue, Jim, you do iTunes. I do iTunes for educational purposes, and 50%, if that's the case, is better than 0%. It's going to help anybody. You can't tailor, or it's difficult to tailor when you're doing an iTunes because a lot of people are listening to it. But I do the best I can to keep it neutral to a point and pace and lead. But equally, if I'm working with an individual, it's going to be more specific to the person. So we'll cover it. We've covered it on the course before. Getting a map of their reality, a representation of their problem, what they see, hear, or feel, and being clear about where they want to go, but invite them to focus on something of their choice. Okay, so they become absorbed. Something useful, relevant, comfortable to them. And we can link that experience. You become absorbed. Okay, it's an invitation, which we'll go through shortly. So rather than inducing the person, I like to use the word inviting them. I'd like to invite you into a more receptive state, into a relaxed state, into a hypnotic state. Hypnosis being like electricity. We know how to use it, but no one really knows how it works. A beginning, a starting point. And the starting point could be inviting the person to a relaxed state. There are misconceptions about hypnosis. The watch and I've had many clients. Yeah. And that's okay, and it's okay. And I've had many people come to see me after a few sessions saying, well, when are you going to bring the watch out? Okay, and I said, well, I've got one. It's to see the time, to make sure we don't run over time. And there is this misconception that you're sort of going to get a watch and wave it at someone's eyes, and that's fine. And I think hypnosis, one of the reasons why it hasn't taken off as much as it could take off, is this stigma around stage, the stigma around, I'm the all-powerful, mighty one. I'm going to fix you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to cure you, and all these ridiculous notions that we sort of see. And I think that's one of the reasons why it perhaps hasn't got the traction that it should get. Because it's really powerful stuff, which we'll see today, and we have done in the course so far. So for me, the metaphor being, if a horse is going at full speed one way, it's easier to ride the horse in the direction it's going and guide it than try and bring the horse to a full stop. Imagine a horse bolting in a certain specific direction. It's easy to carry on riding it in the direction it's going and then steer it, okay, in another direction. Okay, so the person could have an issue, and it's like a cruise liner, and the cruise liner is going at full speed in one direction, and it's going to take a bit of time to change the cruise line. The train, a slight change in the track, and the train could go there, the train could go here. A whole different destination. You go to a roundabout, and you can go that way or that way. A subtle change, and you could end up in a whole different town, city, than what you would do, than where you were going before. So the invitation could be, the person could be a vacation. And I'm not implying that the person's going to go into hypnotic trance. There are some elements of hypnotic qualities in these experiences, and it could be a vacation. Who's ever been on a vacation where they felt really peaceful and calm? Okay? A sunset. Have you ever watched a sunset or a sunrise, and you just notice the sunset, and you're really absorbed in that sunset or that sunrise? Okay? You're purely there. Okay? You're in a peaceful, relaxed state. Music, you hear a tune, and you're oblivious to anything else other than the tune. And the tune changes your state. Who's ever been in the car and you felt down, and then you've heard a good tune that's picked you up for a while? Has everyone got a favourite piece of music? So I want you now to think about your favourite piece of music, or some music that alters your mood. Okay, I'm not going to sing or play any music. But think of a favourite tune you've got. And you have to force it. Just sort of think of a tune you've got that alters your state. Okay? It could be a feel-good tune, a tune that you enjoy listening to, a tune you feel relaxed to, a tune you feel upbeat to. It can alter your state and you go into absorption. Equally, you can get absorbed in a traffic jam. Okay, you become absorbed. Have you ever got absorbed in a traffic jam? You know, and you're not thinking, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And when you're in a traffic jam, you get absorbed, someone sort of cuts you up in the lane, you're not thinking the person could be racing their wife to hospital. You're not thinking that person could be having to get somewhere really, really fast. And we can personalise it. I bet when a gush of wind blows the car, you're not thinking, damn you gush of wind, why'd you do that for me? So we kind of personalise it. And we go into like a trance state, into the absorbed state. Okay? And who's ever felt like that at work or in a situation where it's like, you know, and we go into a state, don't we? Okay? So the appraisal of an event, our interpretation of the events, then links to our emotion, how we feel. So you get news, you're losing your job, you're breaking up, you get news about your health that's not so good, or you get good news, or whatever news you interpret the news to be. You appraise the event. Your primary appraisal after you've been told you're made redundant is in the hand. You probably can't feel it till I mention it. Can you feel your back on the chair, your foot on the floor? Okay, so we can talk about dissociation, association. Okay, so one aspect of any problem is the way we notice it, connect to it, how we associate to it. Okay, association, dissociation. By shifting the person's attention, we can help the client not to notice it, disconnect from it, dissociate it, and then notice and associate with something more useful, a preferred experience, and leading towards a solution. So I'm working with a client, and it was on BBC Radio Manchester a year ago, a good few years ago now, many years ago now. I've worked with many clients, obviously, before and since then, and she had a fear of going swimming. 8 years of age, she had a bad experience in swimming. And every time she thought about going to the swimming pool, fear would piggyback on the prospect of going to the swimming pool. Almost like fear would piggyback. She was regressing to that past experience, connecting to it. So my metaphor is it's like a piggyback. Get the fear off. Like you know, off you go, and then let's get something else that we can associate to, connect to. And we connected to the joys of swimming. The joy of swimming was she could socialise with her friends. The joys of swimming, she could go on holiday for the first time in many years. You can see the transcript on the radio. It was in the 60s, and the original radio show was about her reducing in weight, and she felt one of the ways to reducing weight was to go swimming again. And that would have an impact on her socially as well as a knock-on effect. It's cutting a long story short, and this was one thing that we aimed for. And she tried for many years. She hadn't been for 56 years swimming. So we did timeline, which we cover today on the course, and we did a reappraisal of the event that had happened when she was 8 years of age. And we did some other interventions, which we'll sort of cover on the course as well. But ultimately, in the end, for me, it's about reassociating to the experience of going swimming. Okay, so it's what you're associating to, what you're connecting to. Okay, so if someone regresses, for example, we're not looking to regress the person to find out what happened at the woodshed, so to speak. It's to reappraise. And we'll talk about that on the course today, the experience, because memory, we can change and reinterpret our memory, which we'll talk about later. But ultimately, what we associate to. So if you associate to a unresourceful state, how do you think you'll feel? If you go into an exam and you're in an unresourceful state, so we want to connect to a resourceful state and dissociate from that unresourceful state. it's what the person's associating to. So what we can do is get the person to invite them to associate to a more calm state. So the client that comes to you, if you're a therapist or coach, not so much a coach, as a therapist, will generally be in a maladaptive state. They'll be in a maladaptive state, and what you want to do is to get it into a more resourceful state, and that can be done by inviting them to go into a state that they can understand, they can use, they're aware of. And we can listen to that by, is there a time you went away? What do you enjoy doing? What do you like doing? I always ask my clients, what do you enjoy doing? What are you good at? And when they say what they're good at, if you're good at something, you're going to be in a resourceful state. So think about the things that you like to do. Think about the things that you're good at doing. You might be good at yoga. You might be good at sport. You might be good at cooking. You might be good at math. Things that you're good at doing, and the things you're good at doing, you're connected to a resourceful state. You might have enjoyed a holiday in Thailand. You might have enjoyed a holiday in the Lake District. You might enjoy walking. We can create absorption. And then we can link that to where you want to go, which is quite useful to do, which we'll cover more on the course as we go along. And you could be reading a book. And who's ever read a book and felt really absorbed? And you know, or else you're just purely absorbed in reading that book. Okay? Or you see a piece of art. Okay? And you're just really in that moment. Okay? So I talked about this in the last module, and when I do pain relief, and you may have heard the pain relief audio I did recently on iTunes, and pain relief for me works on dissociating from the pain and associating to an experience. Now, if a pain relief client comes to see me, the first thing I'll do is I'll suggest that they go see a medical person first of all, because I'm not a medical person. Because pain is a knock on the door. It's telling you something. And not being a medical person, I wouldn't want the person 6 months later to have a tumour that could have been... So all things being well, and they do the medical testing and they're okay to work, then for me, the aspect of pain relief is to use distraction and absorption. So a bit like, say, you're talking to a friend and then the phone rings, you take the phone call, and then you come off the phone, you don't recall what you were saying to the friend. Or you go for a walk around the lake and you've got a pebble in your shoe. You don't notice it until you get back. You ever done the gardening outside and you've got little cuts all over your arm? You don't notice it when you're absorbed in gardening. And when I used to work in football at the highest level, there was a player once that we played a football match who'd broken a bone in his, I think it was a tibia, or fractured it. I didn't notice it because he was so absorbed in the game. Okay, so I'm not advising hypnosis for everyone in pain relief, certainly, but it's a useful way to create absorption and distraction. People say, well, how long will it last? Well, metaphorically, I always say it's like a tablet. How long will that last? And just go into state again as often as you feel necessary in that situation. So we can create absorption, and you could watch a film. You're absorbed in the film. Okay? And while you're watching the film, there's stuff going on. And now, you're probably not aware of the sound of the projector, the sound outside, or maybe the sound in the background, because you're blocking all that out. You're relegating that to the unconscious mind, because we talked about, on the first part of the course, you can only focus on so many things at any specific time. Okay? And poetry. So we create absorption through a number of things. We go into a state. You can reflect on childhood memories. Or you could see someone looking out the window during a course and they're dissociating from that situation. And who's ever waited for a bus on a cold, windy day and 2 minutes feels like an hour. But equally on a really nice warm day, and if you're talking to someone that you really enjoy talking to, an hour feels like 2 minutes. It's like time distortion. Okay? So you're away and you're really enjoying yourself on a vacation, and it goes like that. Okay? Or you might not be enjoying yourself and it feels like forever. Okay, so it's almost like time distortion. So it's a natural state of focused attention. Okay? It's just a natural state, and it's one way to work on the under the iceberg. If metaphorically the tip of the iceberg is the conscious brain, and the unconscious is the 90% that we don't see. Okay? Under the iceberg. And we can find a way to access that, which is useful. Okay? And when you think about it, who can remember the first time they learned to walk or talk or do a number of things? You didn't have an instruction manual to learn to walk. You didn't have an instruction manual to learn to talk. Okay? There was no instruction manual, and you did it unconsciously. And right now, your heart's beating. You're not telling your heart to beat. You're breathing. Okay, things are happening automatically. You know, hair's growing and nails are growing and all these automatic things that go on we don't tell ourselves to do. And the body, what would happen if you walked up a hill, do you think? What would your heart rate do if you started walking up a hill? It'd speed up. You don't have to tell your heart to speed up. It would do it automatically. You'd breathe. So the body is a way. It's automatic. And you might feel hungry. You might feel tired. And you wake up in the morning. So all these automatic responses, physiological responses, are unconscious. Okay? Behavior and emotion, a huge proportion of it, is under the iceberg. Okay? Who has ever done something that they've regretted doing, even though they've done it before? Okay. And try telling yourself not to love somebody. And try telling a teenager the error of their ways, and the teenager says, you know what, you're right, mum or dad, and not, that's what experiences. We create experiences for people because we know an idea and we can have an association to an idea and a behaviour. So the young teenager sees their uncle, who they think is cool, smoke, and they associate smoking with cool and behaviour. And equally, you could tell the teenager to be blue in the face, smoking is not good for you. They're probably not going to say thank you for the error of my ways. But you could then take the teenager, you could take them to an emphysema ward, and they could see the effects of it, and that could work. If they see the effects of smoking on people, they might think, actually, that's not for me. Uncool. Behaviour changes. Okay, that's not making any recommendations. It's sort of giving you an idea how experiential, getting in the limbic system. Okay, getting into the part of the brain. Because, you know, you might tell yourself not to eat that ice cream, but you do it. That chocolate, but we do it. So emotion has a big impact on behaviour. Because we have an appraisal of a situation, and after an appraisal of a situation, we have an emotional response. Nothing is good or bad, only other than what meaning we give it. And that produces an emotion, and the emotion that we experience has a big influence on our behaviour, our resources. So you could be walking down the street at lunchtime and see your best friend, and they could walk straight past you after you had a bit of a fallout a week earlier. And what might go through your mind, do you think? And what might you do? How might you feel? What might your appraisal be if you see your best friend walk straight past you in the high street after you had a bit of an argument a week before? They don't let on to you. There's a possibility. And how might you feel if they're your best friend and they mean the world to you? And precisely. And how might you respond? You might send them a text saying, how dare you? You horrible person, you. And it's almost like we're in this trance, aren't we? But then you decide to give your therapist a call at lunchtime and say, I've just seen my best friend. She's walked straight past me. I can't believe it. And you might say, what else could it mean? And it could mean she was busy or he was busy. They may not.
Some new glasses.
Precisely. And then your appraisal's different, and you feel differently, and you behave differently, and you send a text saying, "Are you okay? I saw you." And they might tell you, exactly. They might say, "I saw you. I didn't want to speak to you," and there's nothing you can control about that. But they might say, "I didn't see you." So we can appraise the situation and reappraise it. It could be if they don't want to speak to you, maybe they're going for other stuff as well. We then personalise it. Maybe we personalise it and magnify it. It could be they need their own space. Okay? So we talk about inducing. We'll do some experiential stuff shortly, and we cover this on the first block briefly. We'll sort of cover it again in the course as we go along. And we've got various states. So we look at beta, alpha, theta, delta. For me, one of the goals is, and hypnosis aim, in my infinite wisdom, is to induce a state of relaxation to transcend the client from a waking beta state to a restful alpha state, where they are more relaxed and open to suggestions. And then to a deeper theta state, where they're more susceptible. You can bypass the critical factor, the guard, the gateway, that confirmation bias. So, have you ever heard a song in the morning and you can't get out of your head? A song that you hear in the morning you can't get out. Or you go to bed at night and you watch a scary film before you go to bed and you have a bad dream. It seeps to the unconscious mind. Okay? That's not to suggest that you don't jump in and out. You're not going to be, it's not like clockwork. There's a very good chance throughout the day you sort of dip and dive. You're probably not going to go to Delta very often throughout the day. Well, you might do today if we induce a trance. But hypnosis probably won't work very well then because you're kind of blocked off to the world. But ultimately you could be in the car this afternoon going to Alpha. Nice song comes on. But when you first learn to drive, where do you think you are when you first learn to drive? When you first yeah, because you're kind of consciously first gear, second gear, third gear. And now when you drive,
Delta.
Well, and something, until you get road rage, and then and you drive, and you're in that sort of state, alpha state, where you don't remember the traffic lights, you don't remember the stop signs, you don't remember, you just kind of get there. If you've been somewhere a million times before, it's always like, well, how'd I get there? Okay, and then you might be in the car driving. And there's no one sitting next to you. You're having a conversation with someone who's there, but they're not really there. Ever those conversations where you kind of, they're not there. Hello, nobody's there. So then you're really in a state where, okay, and then you start, precisely, exactly. So the key is really, can we get the person to go into a more receptive state, where they're more susceptible to change? We can use suggestion, intervention, appraisal. Because if you're in beta and you're awake and you come back flustered after lunchtime, my friend didn't say hello to me. Okay, well, do you think it might be this? No, you're on their side, stuff you. You're all as bad as each other. Okay, so maybe it might be an idea to, go into a more relaxed state, a more creative state. Okay, and some of the most skillful people at doing this, by the way, are kindergarten teachers. When they read these wonderful stories. Okay, so for me, if you really want to learn about this sort of stuff in more detail, speak to kindergarten teachers, because they're great at doing this. They have a room full of 5-year-olds, all sitting down doing story time, or martial artists, or people in drama and the arts. They are wonderful at being in the moment. They really are. Okay, that's why I really think things like yoga, things like martial arts, things like drama are quite useful because we're having to access parts of the brain. Things like sport, okay, are useful to do that. So, very briefly, because of time, we'll sort of go into more detail in the next couple of days. But beta person's awake, alert, focused on mental activity. If we want to call it the conscious mind, it's in pretty much full control. Okay, and you try and tell the conscious mind not to eat that chocolate. You try to tell the conscious mind smoking's bad for you. You try to tell the conscious mind don't love that person. They're bad for you. Rationalize. Okay, rational therapy has its place, but what I would say is you tell the teenager don't smoke. No good for you. I decide to take the teenager to when I'm in sport, the troublesome teenager, to a car for the car yards, and say to the teenager, you can have one of those cars if you get your head down and play. Sit in the car, dude, and let's go for a test drive. 18-year-old lad, and he has a drive, and he has a feeling what it's like to have. I'm not saying it's the be-all end-all for everybody, but for a young 18-year-old, it could be a way to sort what he's going through. He's got talents. He's got a lot of ability. And people keep telling him consciously, if you do this, this is going to happen, you do this, and this is going to happen. He's heard it all before. I decide something different. Go to the car yard, sit down, feel the car, smell it, taste it. It's what you can have. Dude, you're talented. You can have that. And that's an idea, an association, and that could change. And not putting it down to doing that experience, he sorts his behaviour out, because he certainly wasn't a walk in the park thereafter. What I would say is that it's left an imprint in his brain. One would think that a little bit of a seed, and if you try that, doesn't work, then do something different. And do something different. Okay? Alpha, the mind is relaxed, still alert. Okay? Passive awareness. The transition between the conscious and subconscious. Okay? And theta, and if you want more information on this, I can send you that. I think I gave you the hypnotherapy manual I wrote in the first 4 days. If you haven't got that, I'll give you a copy if you want that. And I've got a lot of details on this. It gives you loads of details too. In theta, the subconscious mind is dominant with the critical factor bypassed. Okay? It's go away critical factor. Move away. Okay? State of tranquility. Deep relaxation. It promotes suggestibility. That's perhaps when hypnosis is most effective. Perhaps it is. Now, quiet that critical factor down. No, go away critical factor. Go have a cup of coffee and come back later when I've done what I've got to do. So just quiet the critical factor down and see if we can go into the unconscious mind and make some changes. In Delta, Delta is probably the regeneration, we think, of the body. So the person's unconscious, probably with no access to subconscious or conscious mind. Okay. So we can link everyday experience with hypnotic experience, which we'll do shortly. Have a go at it. We can link the two together. Okay. Your own experience, one that you're comfortable going to, one that you're happy to go to. An everyday experience, somewhere that you enjoy going, a place that you feel creative, a place where you feel relaxed, a place where you feel comfortable, calm. And we can link that everyday experience with hypnotic experience. Okay? And we can see when you're doing it, and we'll do a technique, and we'll do some inductions today, you'll see physiological changes. You might see changes in skin colour. Okay, you might see people, one way to think about it would be, what do people look like when they're just about to drift off to sleep? What are some of the changes you see in people when they're sort of, exactly, there are changes, it could be colour changes, it could be the breathing slows down, the heart rate slows down, and there's various things that can change. Maybe they go into a different position, a more slumped position. Okay, they sort of, and you sort of these physiological changes that you're aware of. Okay, in hypnosis, a bit like when someone is sort of starting to drift off. Think of that. That's one way to think about it. And at that point, it's a good opportunity to dissociate and associate. So I may get you to dissociate from the maladaptive state that you're in, and you go into a more safe, relaxed state. It's important to help the person to feel safe. So you get into a more receptive state of awareness. You dissociate from the maladaptive state, perhaps anxious state, perhaps nervous state, and you go into a more receptive state, create your own experience. Perhaps you start reflecting on things that you enjoy doing and like to do well. Okay? Things you do really, really well. And you connect to that resourceful state. Early learnings are quite useful. Because at one point, you didn't know how to walk, but you learned to walk. At one point, you didn't know how to speak, but you learned to speak. So the early learning can be quite useful if we can draw the early learning significantly to what the person wants to change to. It can be quite useful. So for example, if I'm teaching hypnotic language, which we'll do tomorrow, and people at first, if they've done it before, because it's counterintuitive, it's counterintuition, because we're told to be specific, be clear, and it's quite ambiguous. And in teaching it, it's counterintuitive to most people, and it can be overwhelming sometimes because there's a lot to cover sometimes and people want to learn it all, and we know the mind can only process so much at any given time. And I'll suggest, well, you've learned to speak at one point, you couldn't speak, and you said your first words at whatever age you said them. And you don't give an age, you don't say to someone you should know to say your first words at a certain time frame. It happens when it happens. It's an early learning. And one time I was working with this woman who was too afraid to go running again because she'd got an injury and she didn't want to go running again. And I used a learning being at one point you didn't have to learn, you couldn't walk. But when you first learned to walk, you fell down and you got up again. It's a good job your parents didn't say, just give up, don't try no more, because you carried on going. So the early learning can be quite useful too. But also focusing on things that you're good at doing. Because if you focus on what you're good at doing, what are you associated to, connected to? Are resourceful states. So you might say to your students, if you're working with them, start with things you're good at doing. In an exam, start with what you're good at. Build momentum. Okay? Focus on what you're confident doing. It can be quite useful. And what you like doing. You might like doing art. You really absorb painting. You're in a resourceful state. So reflecting on things you like to do, and always think about things that you like doing. Things that you're good at doing. And what you see, hear, and feel when you're doing the things you like to do that you're good at doing. What you see, hear, and feel. And then we can give people ideas and alternatives. We're in that receptive state, and we'll do more of this tomorrow. We can give them ideas, alternatives. One idea, and then it takes one match to make an explosion. So the song says, an idea, you're firing ideas, alternatives. And it might not happen now, it might not happen next week, it might happen in an hour, it might happen next week. We're presupposing it's going to happen. The change will happen. The change might happen when you're reading a magazine. The change might happen when you watch TV. The change might happen when you have a dream at night. The change might happen when you're walking down the street. Okay? Invitation to go in. What I'd like to do as well when we do the exercise shortly, what I'd like to do is we can measure our heart rate. I'll do a relaxation hypnosis with you guys, and you can measure your heart rate. And we can see if there's reduction in the heart rate. Okay? And I was delivering a course one time for the Air Force, and one of the guys was a bit apprehensive about it. Yeah, it's a lot of bloody, whatever. I'm like, okay, rather than challenge him on what he'd said, I said, how about we do some work with you? And I invited him to go into trance and do relaxation. But prior to doing it, I measured his heart rate. His heart was about, say, 80 beats per minute prior to trance. And after about 15 minutes of relaxation, meditation, I went to 60 beats per minute. 60. So if you knock off 20 beats per minute, it's about 10,000 beats less stress on the heart. But equally, what's really important for him, in the environment he's in, you've got to make quick decisions. And I said, make a decision when you're in that sort of alpha state, access it, creative state, when your physiology is in a calm state, a focused state, and make a decision when you sort of run to the end of the room and back again and your heart rate's higher. It's easier when you're focused. And he did me a favour by dismissing it in the beginning, because I could then do a barrel experiment. And the group really bought in there. Because we know that we can have physiological changes in hypnosis, like blood pressure, like heart rate, like body temperature. So it's pretty powerful stuff and useful stuff to have, okay, to be able to do. And we'll do a process shortly. And one thing you can do too, which we're going to touch on this afternoon, before we do our invite you into a light trance. One thing I want to talk about that I talked about earlier today, we're going to touch on later this afternoon, is, and I'm not suggesting to do it in these situations, but certainly in my experience, when you're revisiting traumatic memories, you can alter a memory. Okay, there are memory re-scripting techniques that you can utilize, and they're often taught to people with post-traumatic stress. The memory re-scripting to help them deal with emotional response to a traumatic memory. Okay, so the basis of that, it doesn't have to just be trauma. It can be day-to-day events, day-to-day life, in the way we deal with negative experiences. And that could be the friend not saying hello, that could be not getting the phone call, that could be the business deal going through. We can re-script it, things that evoke a significant emotional response. So the emotion of the friend not saying hello, the emotion of the deal not going through, the emotion of that rejection. We cannot go back and change, but we can try and modify and re-script our memory for these events and make it more positive and benign. At least neutralize it. Redefine it. Redefine the memory. At least neutralize it. Okay? We talked about the friend not saying hello. What else could it be? Well, we're not implying that she didn't see you or he didn't see you, but if they did see you, there's not a great deal you can do about it. They may have their reasons. If they didn't, see if they're okay. It's a different response emotion. You get made redundant, okay, rather than social avoidance and locking yourself away, it might be not jump for joy and say, yeah, it might be okay. I've lost my job before, and I found another job. I'll be okay. Okay, so you can change that to more positive or benign. So you can sort of alter that memory, and you can dissociate from the memory, from the experience. So the experience that Margaret had on the radio talking about the swimming experience was going back there, and regulate the emotions that are evoked by situations. You go back to the pool brought fear. Okay, fear was piggybacking on the prospect of going swimming again, but that had happened years ago. And it wasn't necessarily going to happen now. The event that she had as an 8-year-old had happened 50-something years ago. It wasn't happening now. Okay? So memories are not fixed representations. We talked about that in the first block of 4 days. Memories are not fixed representations of events as they actually happen. Instead, they are flexible and subject to change. Your memory is not fixed. It's flexible and can be changed. With memory re-scripting that we talked about in the course, this change is intentional and top-down, rather than some more what we call bottom-up ways in which memories can be altered, such as through biases and encoding and consolidation. Okay, which we'll do this afternoon and go from there. And that idea, by the way, to my knowledge, was first presented by Pierre Janet, who conducted the imagery substitutions with the hysterical patients in 1919. So Pierre Janet, if you ever look at his work, and in 1919, that was an idea that was presented by him, all those years ago, hysterical patients. And then you can see that transpiring to the likes of CBT. Dr. Aaron Beck, one of the fathers of CBT, by the way, he realised that it was possible to change and modify what he called visual cognitions or mental images of negative experiences to modify the emotions they provoked. Okay, so that was that as well. So during memory rescripting, and we're sort of going to go into more detail this afternoon, people first activate the memory, okay, of an emotional event. They must then identify and focus their attention on the feelings, emotions, thoughts that the memory evokes. Then they rescript the memory by framing it with a more positive or neutral context, neutral or more positive, or even by altering events so the consequences are less negative. Okay, so you could even do a fictional scenario. So the person could have been told off for not doing their homework at school. Get to the front of the classroom and why haven't you done your homework? You could alter that. You could alter that helplessness by saying, how would you respond now at the age you are, the person you are today? Or say they got beaten up. And you could have them fictionally getting help. Because the wounds physically have mended many times, but inside. So inside you could do a different interpretation of the situation. So they might think of the helplessness they felt at the event when they got told off for not doing their homework and they got physically assaulted. They might have felt fear and helplessness, but they could create a new scenario in their mind where they get help, where there is someone there. Okay, and I know it's fictional, but it's a way of altering the memory. So let's say someone intervenes, someone helps them, or they get away from that situation. So the memory that brings the emotion, the fear, the apprehension, all of a sudden they revisit that if it's appropriate. It's not always appropriate to do that, and I wouldn't do that with everybody, but it might be they revisit the memory, and when they revisit it, they see it as someone is helping them, rather than being assaulted and being helpless. Or we create a scenario where if the person, for example, we can create an experiment or a task where they're in an environment as close as they can get to reshape their reality. So it might be that they're attacked by a partner in domestic violence, and it might be they're afraid of being around men or women, even if it happened the other way around. And it might be that you say to the person, actually, you know what, go to a controlled environment, go to martial arts and join martial arts and do some sparring, and spar against someone who, if they were attacked in domestic violence by a man or by a woman, they spar against someone in a controlled environment. So they realise that men or women, whoever they got attacked by, do have control. And if that's not too overwhelming, they can do that till they can get confidence, if that makes sense. Okay, so that could be a way around it. But we'll do more about that, on that this afternoon. So rescripting, therefore, has many different functions, by the way. It gives people the opportunity to update memories, because memories have a big role. The hippocampus, the memory, the amygdala, screening, it draws from the hippocampus, fight, flight, freeze. And to update memories for negative or even traumatic events and experiences if they've been processed poorly, or processed at the time that you didn't have the resources you've got now. So when Margaret at the BBC Radio, when she processed that memory, she was 8 years of age. She wasn't processing it as a 64-year-old who was a very intelligent woman, successful person. She was processing it at that time. Okay? It allows people to explore any emotional responses that may inhibited and which may not have been fully acknowledged or experienced before or after the negative event as well. So before it happened, there was no experience around it. Okay? It allows people to explore any trauma related beliefs that might have, such as the feelings of helplessness or being powerless. But we'll do more of that this afternoon, and it's useful to do that and to sort of be aware of that, and it's useful to sort of understand that we can use the invitation of actually we'll do a process now. So I want to invite you now before we break for lunch. I'd like to invite you all into a hypnosis, and the hypnosis being and bringing you into a really receptive state. Because we've covered so much in the course, we're going to cover a lot more in the course, and there are going to be times in the course where you feel a sense of overwhelm, like we all do in certain situations. We can trust the unconscious mind. Sometimes we don't know what we're going to say until we say it. It's all going in the unconscious mind, and you don't memorize all of it consciously, and we can unconsciously be aware. So we can induce a state of trance, and we can get you into a relaxed state. And perhaps now we can take the, and I'm not wearing a watch myself, but if you want to take your heart rate over a minute, and do your heart rate over a minute if you choose to do. If you've got a watch, you can take your heart rate over a minute, just take your pulse rate, and you can do it over a minute. I don't have a watch, you can time your own.
Yeah, I've got my foot. Sometimes I bring the blood pressure monitor and oxygen levels too. So I didn't bring it. Did you manage to get it? Everyone managed to get their heart?
No, just not.
Okay.
I haven't got a watch.
Okay, that's okay. And if you have, that's okay. If you haven't done it, then it's okay. We can do it this afternoon as well. We can do the heart rate this afternoon too, if you haven't done it already. It's just a way of physiologically, and also if you're going to do relaxation training with staff and people, it's one way of quantifying it. I'm not a medical person. I do and have studied sports performance and sports science, and sometimes I'll bring like the oxygen levels, I'll bring the blood pressure thing, and I'll just bring it from a point of view of giving them an awareness, physiology and mind and body, and go from there. So we'll do a gentle process before we break for lunch, just 10 minutes or so, and I invite you all to go into a state of peace, tranquility, and perhaps you'd like to close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, just breathing naturally and normally. And focus on your breathing. And as you focus on your breathing, perhaps you can hear the clock in the background. And as you notice the clock in the background, you become aware of your heart rate slowing down. And as you notice your heart rate slowing down, you breathe a bit deeper. And as you breathe deeper, your sympathetic nervous system calms down, the parasympathetic kicks in, the sphincter muscles relax, and you begin to regulate your muscle energy, just like a mobile phone on charge. You're going to spend some time recharging the batteries. And perhaps you can hear the sounds in the background. As you notice the sounds in the background, your mind begins to drift away. And as your mind drifts away, it might drift away to a vacation. It might drift away to a holiday. It might drift away to a family gathering. It might drift away to one or the other, or one or all. Or perhaps you want to create your own environment. An environment of peace, of calm, of tranquility. And you can sculpt it, like sculpting the screen in front of you. Notice you'll see any colours, any sounds, any smells, tastes, and feelings. And fully absorb yourself in the experience. It's a wonderful experience. And let your imagination run wild. Perhaps it's a nice summer's day with sun beaming gently on your shoulders, spreading a warmth that radiates through every cell of your body. Or perhaps it's a beautiful spring day and you see the flowers blossoming in the distance. And the smell of freshly mown grass. Or perhaps it could be walking on a beach and you can feel the sand in between your toes. Or perhaps you're in a environment you feel really safe and comfortable. And you could be listening to music, or you could be watching TV. You could be with your friends and family. Or you could be on your own. And it's wonderful. This is your time. And if any negative thoughts come into your mind, rather than challenge them, let them flow like a river. And you can see a river and the thoughts are flowing, being non-judgmental. Let them flow. This too shall pass. Or perhaps, like waves on a beach, the thoughts come in and then they go back out again. And you're watching the waves crash and you're watching the water go back in and your thoughts are going and drifting along and you're letting them disintegrate into the atmosphere. And you have a nice drink, cool drink, and perhaps you spill some of the drink on the floor and the sun evaporates the drink off the floor and you feel an evaporation of any stress evaporate it. Let it go. Breathing naturally and normally. Breathing in, pacing your breathing, breathing out. You have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. And your conscious mind has ways of understanding, and the kind of conscious understandings that you consciously understand are different from the unconscious understandings that you consciously understand. But then there are misunderstandings, and you can consciously understand your own conscious misunderstandings. Or you can unconsciously misunderstand your conscious understandings, but you can't really understand until you take an easy breath. And you go deeper and begin to allow yourself to become more and more comfortable. And now we're going to disintegrate any nervous energy and go into a peaceful state of relaxation and peace. And think about the things you enjoy doing and the things that you're good at doing, the things you like doing. And think about one thing that you really enjoy and like doing, and fully engage, like turning on a screen and you can see the screen and see yourself doing something you really enjoy doing or are good at doing what you do. And as you see yourself doing that, and you can see yourself on the screen, perhaps as doing a presentation, perhaps as doing yoga, perhaps as doing exercise, perhaps as doing a session or coaching, and you can see yourself doing what you do really, really well. Perhaps as teaching, perhaps as your resilience, and you can see yourself doing it. That's what you see, what you hear, what you feel. And step in the screen and do it like the here and now. And as you do that, you know, like driving on a highway, you're in complete control. You can be vigilant to what's going on around you, and the car could join the motorway and you can slow down. And a car that can slow down in front of you, and you see the brake lights and you begin to slow down. And you pay attention to know when you've got to come off the motorway that you come off. So you can be vigilantly vigilant, but you can also listen to music while you drive and enjoy the journey. And you look outside and notice the beautiful countryside, the greenery, and it's a nice blue sky. And you've got some nice music playing. But you're still vigilant enough to slow down if a car slows down in front of you, if the car joins the motorway. And now, I want you to imagine a swimming pool in front of you on a nice, hot summer's day, and perhaps you're on vacation, or perhaps you're on holiday, or perhaps you're just in a gym, and there's a pool in a spa, and you notice the pool, and the pool has got stairs. And at first, you dip your toe in the pool. And as you dip your toes and foot in the pool, you feel a sense of chill. And you bring your leg in deeper to your knee. And as you bring your leg in deeper to your knee, you feel a warmth in your foot and you feel a chill in the back of your calf. Until you bring and walk up to your waist. Your feet and your calves feel warm, and your thighs feel cool. And as you go in up to your chest, your legs feel nice and warm, and your stomach and lower back feel a slight cool. And then you go into your shoulders, and a warmth radiates all over your body as you begin to walk or swim. And just like a cool winter's day, and you begin to walk outside on a crisp, beautiful winter's day. And it feels cold at first, and at first you're hugging onto the coat really tight, and there's a bit of wind blowing. It's a beautiful morning, the sun is beaming. And as you carry on walking, the stronger the wind blows, the more you hold on to the coat. And as the wind blows stronger, the tighter you hold on to the coat. And then as you walk for 5 minutes or so, you begin to warm up. And you take the coat off. And you feel a sense of warmth. And you notice the beautiful environment, the sky, the greenery, the peace, the tranquility. You're completely absorbed in that reality. Now I want you to focus on an intention and what we've covered so far in the course and how you've used it, and focus on what you want to learn going forward. Or perhaps you just want to have an open mind and just enjoy the experience, because you might have an intellectual curiosity or an experiential curiosity of what's to come. But for now, fully enjoy the experience. And I'm going to pause for a moment, and as I pause, let you enjoy the experience. And when you're ready to come back, in your own time, in your own pace, and you might feel really calm immediately, and you might feel really calm in an hour, or you might feel really calm and a sense of peace in a dream tonight. You might watch a film tomorrow. And perhaps you may feel more confident immediately. Or you may feel more confident when you read a technique. Or you may feel more confident when you teach a technique. Or when someone asks you what you covered and you tell them about what you covered. And perhaps you might see the colour blue. Or perhaps you might see the colour green. Or perhaps you might see any other colour that comes to mind. Whenever you see that colour, you feel a sense of peace, calm, and confidence. And for now, just fully engage and enjoy the experience. And in your own time, in your own pace, you come back. If you want to come back, if you want to stay where you are, you can stay where you are. And we'll get you up tomorrow morning at 10. Thank you. Okay, so there we go. How did you find the experience?
Amazing. Oh, gosh.
We didn't have to get you up if you didn't want to. You could have stayed.
I could have just stayed there.
Yeah. Do you know how long it was? How long the experience was? Guess how long it went for?
Don't know.
Yeah, that's one thing we do too. We lose track of time in the front.
No idea.
Yeah, we were about 20 minutes or so. So it probably felt like 2 or 3 minutes in one sense, and that's time distortion. Very much so. So, yeah, there you go. So on that note, we're going to break for lunch now. And after lunch, we'll get a chance to sort of practice what we've put into, put the theory into practical application. And I see you measuring the heart rate there.
We went from 71 to 66.
Fantastic, and that's great. That's great. 5, that's good. And 71's, between 60 and 90 is sort of the range we're looking for, generally speaking. But 5 beats per minute in a short time is fantastic, and 71 is quite good anyway. So that's good. But you get people going down more than that. Yeah. And, where's your heart rate going? Is your heart beating?
Yes, I can even feel one before we started.
Yeah.
It's about 70 something before, and it's about 50 something.
Yeah, and this happens for sure, definitely. And sometimes if people haven't relaxed, if they've had like a really busy morning, it can really, really drop deep significantly. And people say, well, how long will it stay that way? Well, if it goes up again, then do it again, even if it's like 5 or 6 minutes. If they say, well, should I go, what if I get bored of the same place? We'll go to a new place, a new destination. You don't have to go to the same vacation all the time, something new. But that's great. We'll get a chance to sort of practice some of this stuff in the after lunch, and we'll go from there. So, yeah. Oh, there we go. Come off that, innit? That's cool.
What's the thinking behind going into the pool?